Okay, well, it's been a while since I've done one of these, isn't it? Fair bits happened. My motorcycle blew up, so I don't have a bike for 2 days. Engine blew up, or gearbox blew up yesterday, and that was a catastrophic failure with a fair bit of gearbox going down the road. Dead. So the new one's getting picked up Tuesday. So until then, I have to get a lift into work tomorrow. But such happens. Um, we're now days away from the World Cup kicking off next Thursday. Um, that's going to be interesting. World Cup kicking off. Of course, Rafael Nadal's going for a record-breaking 11th French Open title. 252. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm 8 hours ahead, so I don't even know how you're still awake. I've got some family who are just flying to America, so they'll get there 5, 8 hours, something like that. Depends on route they're flying. I think they're flying to LA. But no, I've got the French Open men's final today. Rafael Nadal's going for a record-breaking 11th win. So that'd be interesting. And yeah, the only thing I know about the NBA Finals is LeBron James got really, really annoyed after the defeat in the first game and broke his hand by punching a wall. And then came up with excuses why he and his team lost. They were beaten by the Golden State Warriors, with a better team. So I don't really follow the NBA, but listening to players give excuses on why their team weren't good enough, or excuses on why they lost, it's kind of just accept that you were beaten, and you can always learn more from a defeat than a victory. They lost, they got swept, so you can see there's a gulf in class there. If your team is getting swept in a series of 7 games or 5 games or whatever it is, and you don't come close, the team has got to learn. I mean, you can't just rely on one player to dig you out of a hole. You've got to look at your whole squad, or a group of players, and you may have a star player or a couple of star players, but then you've got to have the working players, the players who will go end to end, the players who will put in the shift and support the team. I haven't watched any of the NBA basketball. NBA basketball is not really a sport that I really follow, or I don't mind watching it every now and then, but I don't have a favourite team. I don't really follow the NBA. I was focusing mostly on the NHL playoffs. More, it's a pity they clash at the same time. That's how the fixtures all work out. That's how it all works out. But LeBron James, I've seen his press conferences, and he basically says, "I was playing with a broken hand." Quick tip: don't punch a wall, break your hand. Quite simple. But I do think that you can't just rely on one player to dig you out of a hole. You can have a player who is an inspiration in the dressing room and is a leader of the team, but you can't rely on that one player to keep digging you out constantly, because that mentally takes it out of them as well. It's not just they may be the better player, the team. If the rest of the team doesn't, put effort in, you're going to lose. And it's very rare that a playoff series final or a playoff series gets swept these days. The fact that there's salary caps and drafts and all that kind of make it more competitive. So it's very, very, very rare that you get a sweep in a playoff series at any point. Very, very rare. To be swept in a final as well, that's pretty rare and pretty embarrassing. But you can learn more from a defeat than a victory, if I'm honest. There have been some one-sided finals in history. If you think about one-off games, so the World Cup in what I would call football, there have been one or two one-sided finals in that. There's been a couple of one-sided finals in, let's say, the Cricket World Cup or Rugby Union, Rugby League, but there haven't been, completely. I haven't seen a sweep in a playoff final for a long, long time, but it does happen. But then you've got to understand why it happened, and they can probably learn more from a defeat than a victory, if I'm honest. Looking at what my week's been a bit chaotic. My motorcycle blew up. my phone broke, and I'm having to spend a load of money to get to work. It's a pain in the arse. But there are some interesting things happening at the moment in sport. I mean, we've got the French Open final. I think Nadal is trying to go for a record-breaking 11th win at Roland Garros. He's won every final he's played at Roland Garros, so that'd be interesting to see if he can do that. Be very, very interesting. But the guy's playing, beat him on clay this year, and has beaten him last year on clay, and is the best player on clay so far this season. So it won't be an easy match. I think they'll go to 5 sets, and that'll be a titanic struggle. But there is a lot going on. I mean, the NHL Washington Capitals was not expecting them to win the Stanley Cup, and with the ease they won the Stanley Cup in the end. But they did. It's been a very, very interesting year in the fact that sport hasn't been very predictable. It's not been predictable at all. There is people ask me to do predictions on scores, and people ask me to do predictions on who's going to finish where in a league, or who's going to qualify for this round or whatever. And it's impossible because this season and this year, this sporting year, has shown how unpredictable professional sport is. If you look at the Rugby League World Cup, the New Zealand side getting beaten by Tonga, no one predicted that. You look at the NHL, Washington Capitals winning, no one predicted that. With the NRL, there's a lot of teams that I thought would be doing better that are doing really, really bad. And I haven't really been able to follow it as much this season as I have in previous years. But I look at the NRL table and I'm like, that's not what I had coming, planned, predicted. Some teams are doing better, a lot better than I thought, and some teams are not doing as good as they should be. So I give up predicting sports completely. I've completely given up predicting sports in its entirety. It's just, you might as well shoot me. I honestly given up predicting, but it's interesting. I mean, Nadal and team, that's going to be a very good French Open final. So if you're staying up anywhere around the world to watch that, it starts in about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. That's going to be a titanic struggle in Paris. The state of origin, New South Wales dominating the first game. We've seen that before, but again, no one predicted that. The Billy Slater controversy with him being injured and then in the team, then out the team. Is this, the changing of the tide? Is the Queensland golden generation on the way out? Is it now a turn for New South Wales' golden generation to come in? All that to discuss, really. I've got to look into that a bit more. I haven't really followed the rugby league in Australia for a little bit. We've had issues over here in rugby league with the Tompkins brothers being Wallies. The Nadal match, it starts in a couple of hours. I think team has a very good chance of beating him. Nadal has dominated Roland Garros for most of the last 15 years. He's every final he's played and he's won. He's going for his 11th title. I think team has beaten him. I know team's beaten him. I know team is also the best player on clay this season. So that's going to be an interesting one. Yes, I know you're a Brisbane Broncos fan. I will be getting on to doing some more NRL videos. I've got to look, as it's now State of Origins come along, I've got to look at the standings so far. And because I did some pre-season predictions, I did all the teams in reverse order of how they finished last year. I'm really surprised with how some teams are actually over-exceeding expectations, such as the Newcastle Knights, and other teams just having an absolute nightmare, or not performing as well as they could. And it's been a very unpredictable year really so far in sport. I would say the last 12 months in sport has been exceptionally unpredictable. And so when people ask me to do predictions on sports, I don't, because you have to look at who won what trophy and what league. Some leagues are very, very predictable. Other leagues, not so much. And you've got to look at where teams finished. And especially international sport. It's been crazy. I mean, who would have predicted the England South Africa score yesterday? I don't know what's happening. I mean, I think there are some things happening off the field with the Cowboys, with a few players. I think I haven't really followed it. I knew that they are struggling. I think Jonathan Thurston is near the end of his career now. I think that shoulder isn't going to last forever. Um, I mean, the Cowboys have got a decent side, but I think it may need a coaching change, some fresh faces brought in there. You got to look at their squad depth and where squad players have moved. Like Ponga going, I think that was an issue. I think that's a problem because Lachlan Coote has had a few injuries over the last couple of years. I mean, Jonathan Thurston had his shoulder. You've got to look at, okay, who's unstudying the player? So who's going to be the replacement for Thurston? Who's going to be a replacement for Lachlan Coote? Who's going to be the replacement for whoever it may be in Tamalolo, for example, whoever it may be, who may be near retirement or near the end of his contract. But bearing in mind, until they got good, they were terrible for years. The Cowboys were useless for a long time. And then Thurston went up there and then they got good. They didn't always win. But the Queensland itself, the Queensland sides aren't looking as good as they were last year. So the Brisbane Broncos aren't having a great season. They're not having a bad season, but there's issues there. There's issues with a lot of teams. So I don't know what's happened. It could be coaching. It could be something's happened in the dressing room away from the game. There are one or two players who've got a few issues away from the game. There could be multiple things, fitness levels, squad depth being tested, injuries. There could be a multitude of things, and that's then down to the squad sitting down and looking at themselves and going, "What's gone wrong?" And I'll have a look at the NRL table when I get in from work tomorrow because I've got a hectic couple of days. I've got a lot of legal paperwork to do. I've got a blown up motorcycle that I've got to try and find a buyer for as parts. I've got to get the new one picked up. I've got to do some legal paperwork to declare the old one as a scrap gone. I've got to sort out my insurance and tax and all sorts. So it's all been a bit chaotic the last week. Oh, completely unplanned. This has all gone horribly wrong. Yeah, I don't do predictions. I think Burnley doing as well as they did this season. I think if you are a real avid follower of the Premier League, you can sort of see that happening slowly because of Sean Dyche and the way the team is run and the way the club is run and how that works. Huddersfield staying up, I wouldn't have predicted that. I wouldn't have predicted all three promoted teams staying up this season. But looking at, I did a round of predictions. I think there was a whole match day where there was, I think 8 games one day, 2 games the other, and I got 1 score right out of 10 games on a Premier League weekend. That's just how it is. And all 3 teams that got relegated all won that weekend. So it says something crazy. But no, I don't. I don't know what. I don't know how people can predict stuff. I don't know how people can be professional gamblers anymore. I used to bet on form, stuff the Grand National, the Gold Cup, anything like that. I'll go by the form book. I'll look at the previous. If it's horse racing, previous 5 races for that horse and that jockey. I would look at the if it's any other kind of team sport, like that, I'll look at the previous 5 to 10 games. Give us a workout. This season, a bit of last season, that you can see that form book, you can just throw out the window. It makes no sense. Arsenal fan. Arsenal, they've got Unai Emery. I think he's a different style of manager. I think he's going to make the team better. I think Wenger was there too long. I'm not disputing. I think Wenger should have possibly gone earlier. I've deliberately not done a lot of football videos the last couple of days, especially with the Fekir transfer from Lyon to Liverpool. I've deliberately not done any football videos because I'll be made to look a fool if I say Fekir's gone to Liverpool. Now he hasn't. Now he has. Now he hasn't. But Arsenal, I think, will get better. They have to spend money in the transfer market. They have to properly develop their youth and give some of these more young players a bit more game time. I think they need to look at their transfer policy definitely on who comes and who goes and how many players are out on loan and a variety of things. There are other things behind the scenes going on, but they need to look at a variety of things. But I think they've got the right coach in place. So that's the thing. He's the only coach to win the Europa League 3 times in a row, much like Zidane winning the only Champions League 3 times in a row. So he has some pedigree. He has coached some big egos, and in the Arsenal team, there's not a lot of big star players anymore, so that's a good thing. And I think he can improve the quality level and improve each individual player as well. Andy Murray, he's aiming to come back for Wimbledon, but there's a lot of. I mean, Federer gave the French Open a miss. Djokovic didn't look great when he got hammered by Kekanato in the quarterfinal. Nadal, this could be a challenge for him. But no, the big four, they're not looking as invincible as they were 5-10 years ago. So there is a change in men's tennis at the moment. There's a definite change. But Murray, he's, I think, slightly delaying his comeback for Wimbledon, but I think he could be near the end of his career. I think Federer missing the French Open, I think he's near the end. Djokovic, he's not looking great either. I think these four players, I think Nadal's actually looking the fittest. I think they're all going to be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. But yeah, it's been a hectic couple of days for me. As I say, my motorcycle decided to completely blow up yesterday morning on the way to buy the new one, and now I've got to finish the sale or purchase of the new one on Tuesday. So I don't have a bike for a day, which is really, really annoying. But my gearbox decided to just go bleh, and bits of gearbox all over the road, and it was a catastrophic failure. So I've had a stressful few days, and I'm trying to quit smoking, and it's all, and I've got a mouth ulcer, and I'm all really frustrated. I will warn those on the live stream. I'm not staying on long. I'll be done by about, I would say 11:30. I'm not staying on long. So if you're expecting a long live stream, it's not going to be a long one today. I just thought I'll do one. We've got no trolls so far, which is beautiful. And we'll discuss a few things. So hello, everyone who's just joined. Whack your questions in. But one thing I do want to talk about actually is the Fekir transfer and how it's gone wrong. And I will get on to Roger Federer in a minute, but the Fekir transfer for Liverpool from Lyon, they put a bid in, Lyon accepts. He does an interview wearing a Liverpool kit at Liverpool at Anfield. He's in the medical. Then they find out he has an undisclosed knee injury that Lyon haven't disclosed to him. So Liverpool go back and say, we want a bit of money off. Lyon say the transfer's off. And it's all 48 hours, it's been chaos. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't done a transfer video on that or the saga, because it's evolving. And then some are saying, be on after the World Cup. And there's all this going on. And it's making both clubs look very, very stupid, especially Liverpool. Roger Federer is always a favourite going into Wimbledon. He may not be the favourite, but he's always a favourite. He's very, very good on grass. It's whether at his age, the fact he's missed most of the clay court season, I think deliberately. Will he actually be match rusty? Will he be fit enough? You got to look at Murray as well. Murray, Federer, they're looking a little bit. Murray's been out injured for a year. Federer is now dropping tournaments and focusing on certain tournaments. That could be to his benefit. It may not be. Djokovic doesn't look right either since his elbow injury, and Nadal looks actually the fittest. So I would say Nadal might be in good form, but we shall see. Federer's always a favourite. He's very, very good on grass, but he's deliberately missing the French Open. Says to me, he's managing his body. He's managing a minor injury that he doesn't want to get worse, and he may not be on the top of his form. These two footballers, Bale to Man United, not with Mourinho there, not with the style of football Man United are playing, because Bale was critical of Zidane. Zidane's gone, and he wants more game time. Because Bale was very critical of Zidane, Zidane is now left. There were rumours that both Bale and Ronaldo weren't happy at Real Madrid at various points this season. The manager that they were under has now gone, and someone new will come in, whoever that may be. So it's that time of year. Ronaldo is going to the World Cup, Bale isn't. So Bale will probably have more transfer interest because he's not at the World Cup. So therefore he's not with an international squad. Therefore his coach is not saying, hang on a second, let my player focus. Because a lot of international managers who are at the World Cup told players' agents, if they're going through a transfer, complete it before the World Cup, not during. So I think Bale, if he was to go, there'll be a lot more rumours than there are now. He was just rumoured to be unhappy. Nothing new on that. Ronaldo, he's past his best. He's still a damn good player. He's still like a world-class player, but he's not as good as he was 5 years ago. So who would want to take a risk on a player who's now slowly declining and getting older. Um, there are rumours that Real Madrid want to get Neymar, but I'm not sure how that would work the dynamic because Neymar has played for Barcelona. So that's interesting. I think the Neymar, Ronaldo, Bale triangle is going to be a very interesting who goes where. I think if Real Madrid are serious about Neymar, and there are talks going on, and it is all over the internet on various forums that this is going on, they're going to have to get rid of either Ronaldo, Bale, or both. But I can't quite see it somehow. I just can't. I think we're already seeing that transfer market's overinflated yet again. Players are going for double what they should be going for, which is silly. And therefore, I don't know if it depends who what the new manager at PSG has decided going forward. And we'll have to take it from there. Really, at the moment, it's just rumour. Neymar is at the World Cup, so if any move was going to happen, the Brazilian coach has said it has to happen before the World Cup. If you are interested in any players in my squad, get those transfers done now, which means Real Madrid and PSG have 4 days to sort something out with 2 of those players at the World Cup. And international coaches basically saying to the club teams, you want to sort these transfers out, you do them before the World Cup. Because now all the squads are out in Russia. They're all arriving in Russia now. So this is getting close. Who I think will win the World Cup is the team that can cope with the travel and the climate the best. That's the simple answer. I could not give you an answer. If you look at the 06 World Cup, Italy won that. There wasn't a lot of travel, but the temperatures and the thunderstorms were very similar to what will happen in Russia. You look at the 98 World Cup, that was the French. So I'm going by European World Cups. I'm looking at European World Cups. Italia 90, that was the Germans. Spain 82, that was the Italians. So European World Cups are normally won by European side. That's what I'm getting at here. The South Americans don't do well with playing in Europe. They do well in the sense that they get to the knockout stages regularly. But in recent times, in the modern era, so 66, England, hosts win. 1970 was in Mexico, Brazil wins. It's in Latin America. 74, it's in Germany, the Germans win. 78, it's in Argentina, the Argentinian team wins. So you can see a trend here. It's in the southern hemisphere. It's generally a South American side. If it's in the northern hemisphere, it's generally a European side. Although Brazil won in '94 in the US, so it's a difficult one. But I don't think it will be Spain. I honestly don't. I think there's a lot of rivalry between the regions in Spain again, with Catalonia and the rest of Spain, which could bubble over, which it's done in the past. The regionalism of Spain has done that in the past, same with the French. So we'll have to see if they've gone for a Barcelona-Real Madrid mix. That could be an interesting one. But there's a lot of Spanish players who were good enough to get into that squad who haven't gone. I don't think it'll be Spain somehow. I think their golden generation is now on the way out. Barcelona have a track record of developing youth players, either from the Catalan region of Spain or the rest of Spain, or youth players who've gone there to their academy. They have a track record. You just have to look at the amount of midfielders they've let go. They can afford to let go. I think Iniesta and Xavi and Pedro and all those players that have come through over the last 10, 20 years, they're all local. They're all Spanish. But they won't necessarily have to go out and buy one. They can develop the youth there and then, actually, with the youth setup they have, which is a fantastic youth setup they have at the Barcelona club. They're the clubs that are more successful, are the ones that have very, very good youth setups, generally speaking. And Spanish football, I think almost every club has a great youth system. It's not just Barcelona, it's not just Real Madrid. You've got Athletic Bilbao, you've got Atletico Madrid. A lot of their good players have come through their youth system. Um, Real Madrid's a bit different. They weren't under the Galacticos because they did also decide to spend a lot of money on players they didn't develop, and Barcelona did that for a while, and they were less successful. A good youth setup breeds success. That's something the Premier League could learn from, but tend not to. Um, I don't know who they will replace Iniesta with. There could be a short-term transfer where they get a player in for 2-3 years to fill that gap while they develop some youth players and get those younger players to shadow the more experienced members of the squad. Hence, probably why Coutinho was probably signed, but his role is slightly different in the midfield. He plays slightly further forward, so he will have to adapt his game and change his role, and pick up a few other roles. So it's an interesting one. Coutinho could be that guy who's in there, like a Ronaldinho, while the youth system just produces some more young talent. But I have noticed that I will say this: Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Athletic Bilbao. They're the 4 teams that have never been relegated from. Well, no, Atletico Madrid have been relegated from La Liga. So only 3 teams have never been relegated from La Liga, and that's Bilbao, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. They have very, very, very good youth setups. They produced quality players for decades, if not a century. So this is where Spanish football is good. Is they've got a lot of youth players that do get brought through the clubs and end up in the main team earlier on than in the UK and in other countries. So, well, they're good. But club football and international football are 2 different things. And as we saw at the last World Cup, Spain were all over the place. And a lot of that Spanish side are in this Spanish side. So Sergio Ramos is still at the heart of that Spain defence. And that Spain defence 4 years ago was atrocious. And we will see. Man City may have a good youth setup, but a lot of those youth players don't make it into the main squad. They're all over the place. They've got a lot of players out. Same with Chelsea. They develop the players and they send them out on loan or sell them dirt cheap. So Man City may have this youth setup, but if Man City have this youth setup, why is Pep not? This is what I'm surprised with Pep Guardiola. He's signed a long-term contract there now, which is rare for him. Why is he not promoting a lot of those youth players? Because when Pep goes, the style of football will change. And we will see. They do have a good youth setup. They've invested a lot of money in the youth setup, a lot of money. But it's a big but. So a lot of those youth players are not getting into the main squad as much as they should because they're buying in players rather than developing as much at the 18, 19, 20, 21, that age group. Same with Chelsea. Chelsea have a great track record of getting youth players into the academy. Is what they do when they hit 17, 18, 19, we're on the fringe of the first team. And then they just get chucked out on loan and forgotten about. So it's interesting. It's how you keep the youth in going through the system all the way to the main team, to the senior team. Man City develop it, and then you got to look how many Man City players are not at the club right now who are still contracted to Man City. If you bring in a salary cap, that would affect that completely. That would cause carnage for clubs like Man City if you brought a salary cap in. And there is financial fair play because at the moment, Man City are at the top. Let's say they have a bad season and finish 5th, hypothetically. And they miss out on the Champions League. Ooh, oh dear. That would be a disastrous season for Man City in the current climate. 10 years ago, that was a good season for Man City getting Europa League. Now, if they get Europa League rather than Champions League, that is a disaster for Man City. Absolute disaster. But there's been a lot of discussions about the TV rights for football, the Premier League at the moment, the quality levels. Now, the Premier League can be entertaining, but sometimes some of the games I've seen, absolutely atrocious. I think the TV package. Now, I know people, you guys in this lobby are all from around the world, and you buy into the Premier League, and you watch it, and you enjoy it, and that's fine. But for me, a British fan of sport, I cannot afford to pay the prices for that subscription TV over a year. That's like 3 months' wages gone. It's nearly on £3,000. If you add all the subscriptions they've now brought in from for next year onwards with Amazon, BT, Sky, you look at all that, unaffordable. Whereas in other countries around the world, the package you pay per month or per year, it's dirt cheap. Like 120 quid for the whole year, and you get every game of your choice. Here, £3,500. That's where the imbalance is wrong. They really, I think, that's where the top level sport in this country has gone wrong. Is the Premier League was meant to improve youth development, so the national side's terrible. Premier League was meant to make it fairer for fans, so that's why ticket prices have gone through the roof. Premier League was meant to improve the quality of the game, which is why they voted against VAR. So they've voted against evolving the game to make it more modern. It's great. And the TV rights were meant to be good for the consumers. That's why it's £3,000 a year. There's a lot of things wrong with not just football, but a lot of sports in this country. There's a lot. That's where it's gone wrong. And then you've got to look at, in comparison to other leagues, how unaffordable it is to go to a game because of the ticket price. And now they keep changing the kickoff times in the evening to suit the overseas market, which is not your fault. You guys are fans of the sport, and that is great. But when the domestic fans are being screwed over for getting to and from games because they're kicking off at like 8:30 at night, not great. Because how are they meant to go home? And there's a lot of midweek games that no one wants, and a lot of Monday night games that no one wants, and the Friday night game that no one. There's a lot of games that fans don't want to go to. But and the players' wages have gone through the roof in the last 20 years. They've really grown far too much. So when someone like Danny Rose comes out and whinges, "I'm not being paid enough," when you're getting paid 50 to 60 grand a week, that's kind of insulting to those who would be lucky to get 50, 60 grand a year. I'm lucky to get a third of that a year. That's where I think there's a disconnect between the top level sportsmen and the fans. The average wage is like, I think, 25 to 36,000, depending on the area you live in the UK, pounds. When a player's whinging that he's not getting that a week plus, it's wrong. It's wrong. So I have little sympathy for top end players whinging, "I'm only paid 50, 60, 70 grand a year, I want more," when the average wage, a week, the average wage is less than half that a year. What's gone wrong? I would love, to be on 50 grand a year, let alone 50 grand a week. And when they're whinging about, "I'm not paid enough," that's, to me, pretty sickening. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm a fan of sport. I understand they've got to get paid. But there has to be a limit. And if you put a salary cap in place, that will actually cause chaos for Man City and Chelsea with their youth setups because they're on contracts. And that will reduce how much they can afford to pay players. And a salary cap has worked in so many other sports and has actually made those sports far more interesting and fun to watch than they were before. Because that means any team can win rather than just a handful. And the same teams win over and over again, the silverware. It gets a bit dull. If you have multiple teams being able to compete for that silverware, it makes it more fun. And yeah, the Premier League's all about money now, not about the fan. The fan gets ripped off. I mean, the prices you have to pay for replica shirts, 80 to 120 quid. Away tickets, not including transport and food, 70, 80 plus quid. Season tickets going up. It's all about money. And it's when the players whinge about their wages going, "I'm not paid enough," when they're paid 50 to 100 grand a week. The average wage in the UK is half that a year. So it's kind of insulting to the fans who pay the money to go, or can't afford to go, so they want to watch on the TV, but then they can't afford that. So they're just cut off from the sport they love. So it's an issue, and it's not going away. And Peter Scudamore is Well, Richard Scudamore, sorry, is going, stepping down as Premier League chairman. Thank God, because he's done nothing but ruin the game. And we'll find out who replaces him, and the path will carry on the same. It's a shame. I know there's fans of football around the world for various teams. I mean, I've got subscribers on here who support Huddersfield and they're from Australia. I've got fans who, fans of clubs from all over the world who go, I support this team, but I live here. And it's great they are able to do that. But the domestic fan here in this country is being really ripped off royally. We can't access it affordably on subscription TV if we could. We don't get enough from free to air. And but they're also behind paywall. They're also put behind a pay-per-view system. Apart from a couple of international tournaments and a couple of club matches, they're all behind. You have to pay X amount a month, a year, whatever it may be, to watch them, and it adds up. The other sports are there, but they're making them less accessible. They are cheaper to go and watch. I will admit that. Cricket's got a few issues, but both rugby league and rugby union is cheaper to watch. But put behind paywall. They're hidden behind a subscription system, and that's what a lot of people try and succeed in watching either on YouTube or on VPN, legal streaming. They don't want to pay for it anymore. There's reached a point now where fans are saying enough is enough, and that's a problem. And with BT Sport hemorrhaging money, and this is what I don't know how the TV rights are done in every country around the world, but BT Sport is one of the players in the pay-per-view sports in this country. They're losing money, hundreds of millions of pounds. They're losing. They could go bust. The guy who set up BT Sport has been fired by BT this week. Viewership is not great. The quality is complained about a lot by viewers. Are saying BT Sport is a terrible sports set of channels. The commentary is poor. The production values are terrible. The studio analysts aren't great. It's overpriced. It should be free, and it was free originally. They put it on free, and then they realised we're not getting and then they decided to put it behind a paywall. If it was free to air, I would watch it and be more engaged in what I'm watching. But they decided to put it behind an unaffordable price tag, and it's not right. So there's a lot of issues with the televised sports in the UK, and a lot of sports are struggling, and a lot of teams are struggling as well, because there are issues where long term, I don't know how sustainable the pay-per-view or subscription sports services are going to be. It was meant to be free for all BT broadband customers, and they lied, because I got it for 3 days, and they said, "Oh, this is a freebie." It was meant to be free, and then they decided to lie in the small print as well, and they took it away. But when they got the Champions League's rights, and I watched the Champions League and Europa League on YouTube, the quality of presenting was shocking. Jake Humphrey knows nothing about sport. He's just a tool. I'm so glad the BBC got rid of him. And BT Sport are paying him a stupid amount of money, and he's chronic. The female presenter who was on the Europa League final was useless. Bless her, she was completely out of her depth. They had to borrow the BBC, ITV, and Sky Sports presenters for those finals. The Europa League final, the studio wasn't at the ground; it was back in London. The Champions League final was just advert after advert after advert. And BT are feeling the aftermath because more people are turning off BT. They're now realising that because they're losing customers, they've got to shed a load of staff. BT Sports losing money, hemorrhaging money. Hence why the TV deal that we got with Amazon is what it is, because BT Sport has screwed up. And they spend a lot of money in legally trying to shut down these VPNs because people don't want to pay for for a crap service. I mean, I'm a BT customer. We've had to change our wireless router today because the last one was so bad. We bought a new one, and even then there was issues. It wasn't clear how it's just a poor service. The guy who actually ran BT Sports been fired. The guy who was in charge of BT came up with the idea of having BT Sport been sacked this week. Acrimoniously told you we're useless. You have ruined this company, and BT Sport won't last much longer. They have to give it back free to air because if they don't, that's going down the toilet, and we'll have another Setanta and another collapse, or another ITV Sport and another collapse of a pay-per-view TV company, which will have catastrophic consequences long term for a lot of teams, especially football and cricket and rugby league, who are reliant on the TV money deal that they sign to keep them afloat, those leagues. I will be watching the French Open final, so I'll be winding down this live stream in a couple of minutes because the British touring car is on. I want to watch a bit of that and then watch a bit of the French Open final and then go back to the motorsport. England cricket team, a mess. Simple. England cricket is a mess at the moment. You could look at the inconsistency. They were terrible in the first test against Pakistan, brilliant in the second. Notice Ben Stokes wasn't playing in the second test. I think Ben Stokes is overrated. I think Ben Stokes needs to sort out his legal crap. The ECB needs restructuring. Alistair Strauss needs to go permanently. And what's the point of this England-Scotland ODI? I mean, there's no test series from now till August. So what is the pissing point of having an Australia ODI? No offence to the Australian team, and Australia's got their own problems that they're dealing with a new captain and a new coach. But we only had the Ashes like less than 6 months ago. Why are we having a one-day series that's pointless because the scheduling's all been screwed up? Because the ECB and the ICC screwed up the scheduling. That's great, isn't it? But the England cricket team itself, they need to stop promoting and dropping these players. If they're going to have a rotation policy with players to give them a bit of experience to the younger players, fine. Don't use the word dropped when they're taken out of the team, so they've been rotated. The way the press come across with it and the press releases by the ECB are poor. The selectors need to have their heads examined. Coaching needs to change because I can see India whitewashing England. I really can see the Indians smashing England all over the place. I don't know what else to say. I've done a lot of videos on English cricket and the issues that lie within. The World Cup in 2019. That's going to be an interesting one. I think that's a toss-up between India and Pakistan for that. Maybe the West Indies, because the West Indies like the shorter formats of the game. The West Indies will be dangerous. Hopefully the Australians have rebuilt the confidence in themselves and in the cricket public fan base after the ball tampering. South Africa always have a good one-day side. England's one-day setup is actually really good. And they're the hosts, so that could really help grow the game. And the ECB needs to learn to put it on free-to-air so we can actually watch it because it's a World Cup. Every other World Cup is shown live, free in this country. Cricket, behind a paywall. No one wants it behind a paywall. I'm going to keep going on about that. I do watch the occasional AFL bits and pieces, but again, it's really hard in the UK. Really difficult. I don't mind watching it. I've watched some of the older games from years past, but get this season, impossible. The AFL and NRL are trying to make it really hard to get content, which I think is insane. If they want to grow that game and grow their fan base, let the fans around the world watch it for free or very discounted, and we will. Now, Collingwood have got a good side. Collingwood have always had a good team. Very historical. I like that. I like historical teams. They have a lot of history to them. I do think the AFL with some of their expansion teams, so the Greater Western Sydney and the I think it's the Brisbane Lions, they could have handled that a lot better. There's a couple of their expansion teams that really are losing a hell of a lot of money, and they're propping them up. They could have done when they grew the game a bit better, but it's a difficult one. I mean, it's not it's a difficult one because I haven't seen enough of the AFL the last year or so because we've added a couple of subscribers as moderators because I've realised that's the way forward after the troll incident. No, it is interesting, the AFL. It doesn't get mentioned as much on the channel as I would like, but it's very hard over here in the UK to watch enough of it to have an opinion of what the sport is now. When I used to watch it a couple of years ago, it was more accessible. So in the last few years, on YouTube, it's got very, very hard to even watch highlights because copyright violation. The AFL Commission owns this content and this kind of crap, which I think is actually harming the sports long term and actually helping them. If they were to stream games live on YouTube, people would watch. They would. And if they were to put the replay up, full match replay up, a day or two afterwards, people would watch, and they would watch a lot, and they would get a lot of advertising revenue, a lot of views. They would work out looking at the data where people are watching from. So it is difficult to comment on a sport that I haven't seen a lot of over the last couple of years. I've seen bits and pieces, what I can, but it is hard to comment. But one thing I have done a video on is the Essendon. Okay, I understand. Well, the Storm and the Broncos aren't having. I mean, the NRL this season's been all over the place. But again, because of the copyright violations on YouTube and the fact it's very hard to get VPNs for it without them getting shut down constantly, and I really can't be bothered with the effort of just hunting around for a dodgy stream. I'm relying on going on the internet and looking at the scorecards and things like that, and it's not great. But here's the thing. I have done a video on the Essendon peptide scandal. Did it last year, I believe. I think he did it in September last year. And that is an interesting one because that happens at the same time that the Storm are breaching the salary cap and Cronulla are doping their players as well. Stephen Dank and the things around that all happen roughly at the same time. And that is a black stain on Australian sport. Real black stain is the peptide scandal, the peptide scandal at both Essendon and at Cronulla, and there were other clubs involved in both codes, and the Storm breaching the salary cap. That all happens at roughly the same time in Australian sport, which is exceptionally interesting. And those are two black stains that have never gone away, is the fact that Cameron Smith even admitted having a secret second contract. And he wants to be like in the the NRL Hall of Fame or whatever it is, will be that kind of, immortal. Shows the issues that the NRL and rugby league as a sport generally has. But no, the Storm and the Broncos are having interesting seasons and not in the way that they want. Also, it's origin period, so a lot of the younger players get to play. But again, haven't been able to watch much of the NRL this season, which is a pain in the arse. But I think it's a changing of the tide in the NRL. There's some new players coming through, and there's some new teams that are going to be at the top, and some other teams that are not going to be at the top for a while. It's just how the salary cap works, and this is showing that a salary cap system is working. And it's showing that again, I think it is findable on a couple of channels, but again, they're on pay-per-view, they're behind a paywall, they're very hard to get hold of. I've caught bits and pieces of State of Origin games like a day after they've been played, a week after they've been played. Some YouTube will post them, but now the NRL and the Australian Rugby League are like basically shutting everything down for copyright, which is a pain in the ass. So I can only go on some of these great YouTubers that would do montage clips or um, stream matches. They're gone, and I think the NRL's regretting that decision slightly. Used to, I used to love, watching State of Origin. It's not the same. I've seen comments on forums and I've seen comments on by YouTubers who've made like me do videos like this in front of a camera that State of Origin is losing a bit of its appeal. It's not the same because they got rid of City Country as well, which I think the NRL was going to regret down the line. I think they should have kept City Country. I think Queensland should have also possibly had a City Country kind of format as well. I used to love watching that. Oh yeah, no, totally. The NRL needs it back as well because I understand the concern with head injuries and concussions, but the game is less entertaining. It really is, and I watched the Toronto Wolfpack play Warrington Wolves in the Challenge Cup over here because that is free on TV, and that needed a good punch up, and they almost had it, and then the referee sent the player off the tiniest punch. But here's the thing: if it's international rugby league, you can still fight. So that's where rugby league needs to have a universal set of rules that it does not have. NRL's got a 2-ref system. Super League has 1. International has a 1-ref system but allows fighting. State of Origin 2-ref system, and some of the original Origin punch-ups are really good with like Harrigan and Bella. They do try and kill each other. They really go for it, but it's lost the appeal for me a little bit. It's not quite the contest of gladiators it was 10, 20 years ago when I was a kid. It has changed. It's not as, I would say, enjoyable. Also, because Queensland have dominated pretty much for the most of the last 14 years, it gets a bit boring knowing that the Maroons are probably going to beat the Blues 9 times out of 10. And for whatever reason that may be, the Queensland side have had Slater, Cronk, Thurston, and Smith. Now, the fact that 3 of those players played at the Melbourne Storm and that didn't raise any eyebrows after they reached the salary cap once, that these guys are still at the Melbourne Storm, and these are 3 immortals at the moment. That's a bit strange. Also, the fact that some of the Queenslanders actually were born in New South Wales and vice versa, that makes no sense to me. I think there are some State of Origin players who actually represented other countries. That's interesting, like Tonga and Samoa and Fiji and things like that. But it is what it is. State of Origin has lost its appeal slightly for me. I've seen other forums and YouTubers just say pretty much the same thing. They want to have the biff back, and they want to have the shoulder charge back. And to be honest, I think the rate of concussions has actually gone up since they took out fighting and the shoulder charge. I honestly think, from what I've seen and the games I've watched, also the head check. A lot of the players who literally look concussed and knocked out are still allowed to play on. They go off and somehow they pass the HIA and they go back on. Don't get that. Honestly, if a player's got to go for a head check, seriously, I honestly believe the amount of concussions has gone up. I'm not saying that contact sports aren't dangerous, but there have been players when I have managed to actually get hold of an NRL, AFL, or rugby union, or whatever game, whatever sport it is, you've had to go for a head check, and they come back on, and you can tell that guy was sparkoed. There's been several instances in the last couple of years where I've seen that. It seems to be more prevalent than it was, let's say, but I know concussions are a serious thing, but If a player's been banged on the head and you can tell he's not right, he should not come back on. Rested for a minimum of 6 weeks, regularly assessed, and they don't do that because again, the money. Come on, Pellegrini at West Ham. I haven't seen. I will answer this. I'll take a couple more questions. It's a short little live stream today because I'm going to be watching the touring cars in a minute, and then I'll be watching the French Open, and I'll do a video on the French Open when the Dow team match after it's finished because I've got a lot to do. Pellegrini at West Ham. I think it was a good move by the club. It was one of the few moves they've made in the last decade that makes any sense because I don't trust Sullivan. I mean, I'm not a West Ham fan, so I'm making that clear. I'm not knocking West Ham, nor am I supporting West Ham in any way. I'm neutral here. But the way West Ham have acted over the last decade or so has been very, very chaotic. Sullivan and Gold are chaotic owners and criminals. Let's not forget that, pornography offences. The fact that they've laundered money through the club to avoid paying taxes, and that came out recently. They've made a lot of bizarre moves. The move from Upton Park to the Olympic Stadium is a joke. I know a lot of West Ham fans who live around where I live outside London, and they've been very, very critical on that move. I remember about a decade ago, they spent a lot of money, maybe about 12 years ago, redeveloping the main stand at West Ham. A good bit of money was thrown into that. They're leasing the stadium in London. They don't own it, so that contract can be, terminate any time. The owners of the London Stadium could sell it on to someone else. That's why I don't get why the NFL Jacksonville Jaguars only did buy the Olympic Stadium. Really don't get that. But there you go. He's obsessed with Wembley, but there's an Olympic Stadium that is able to be sold just down the road. But hey, but this move makes some sense, which so far they haven't. But if they do, that will be disastrous for the team and the fan base. But I've discussed the Premier League. I think the TV rights deal was all wrong. I think the wages are all wrong. And the ticket prices keep going up. And I think the product actually on the field is going down because the principle behind the Premier League was to save clubs financially. So that's why more clubs are in debt. The principle of the Premier League was to improve youth development. That's why Huddersfield have had to close their academy because the rich six clubs, the big six, keep pinching their players, by tapping them up and nicking them illegally, and the FA does nothing. The Premier League does nothing to support a member of like the FA and the Premier League. Like ticket prices keep going up, players' wages have gone through the roof. A manager's job could be over in 6 days to 6 months, whatever it may be. I mean, we've seen some managers last less than a month in a job, not just in the Premier League but in all leagues. And a lot of clubs are in serious financial problems. If you look at the Championship season before last, the 3 teams that got promoted, all 3 of them actually made a loss. Even Huddersfield went up through the playoffs. They made an operating loss. If you take the playoffs into account, the amount of money they made from the playoff game, they made a loss. There's a reason why Aston Villa are on the verge of administration. Only 3 to 5 clubs season before last in the Championship made a profit. Not one of those clubs got promoted. Not one of those clubs got relegated. The average losses for a Championship club is about £20 million. And this is the Premier League. This is maybe the Premier League's, giving British football that boost up the arm to improve finances. Very few clubs don't have debt that's skyrocketing, and a lot of clubs make an operational loss every year. And they're going after Aston Villa on the financial fair play. It's not the players on the pitch's fault that the club has got financial problems. It's not the fans' fault. It's the owner. So they punish the fan base and the grassroots level of the club. Great. It's a great system. The fit and proper persons test is an absolute farce. And the amount of money is killing the game. But no, so far Pellegrini's been treated reasonably well at West Ham, back to the point. But it links into a lot of other things. Sullivan and Gold, the fact they moved from Upton Park, the Berlin ground, to the Olympic Stadium hasn't gone down well with a lot of fans. And the same could be said of a lot of teams, how they're run. A lot of teams in the Championship making or operating a loss. Most of the Championship. And the Premier League hasn't really helped. Still. Right, I'm going to call this live stream a day. I know it's been a short one, but it is what it is. I will be doing a video on the French Open final. I'll be watching that. So yeah, thanks for everyone's little input. I know it wasn't a long one. I know I've got viewers all over the world watching this one. So we'll call that a day because sports on TV. And thank you very much for watching and getting involved. I know it's a little short one that only lasted an hour, but need to be done. Hadn't done one for a while. Keep your eyes open. I will be watching some of the sport today. Of course, the World Cup's around the corner, so there'll be a lot of videos to do. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.